Welcome to the Armchair Fantasy Football Podcast. Here are your hosts, DJ Marcotte and John Soroyce. Enjoy the show.
Welcome back to the one and only working class podcast, the Armchair Fantasy Football Podcast. We are the Blue Collar Ballers, John and DJ. You can catch us on Facebook and Twitter. On Twitter, we are at John2977. That's John. And at Armchair Kingpin. That's me. We are also, what's the Instagram thingamabobber there, John? Help me out.
Armchair
_fantasy _football. Is that what it is?
Yeah, I believe
Nice
so.
job.
You just did so fast.
Slow clap. Slow clap for John.
Oh, okay.
Soroyce.
Weren't you just on the page? Armchair
Underscore. That's an underscore. Yeah.
fantasy _football.
What would you do without me? How would you navigate through life without me? Think about that.
He says that, but he needs me for audio.
Welcome back to the pod. We are talking about rookie wide receivers today, John. Very exciting stuff. We want to remind everybody, and we will continue to remind you guys, that March 11th, we will be at Bandit Brewing in Bedford, Maine. You got the address for that still?
Yep, it is 32
Main Street.
Main Street, Bedford, Maine.
Yep. And that's going to be, like John said, right across from the old Happy Dragon, the old standby Happy Dragon for all you Biddeford residents and your Chinese food fixes. Right across from there, next to Portland Pie. Bandit Brewing is where it's at for all of your craft beer needs. They're probably the best brew pub I've ever been to / tasting room. They do a great job over there, and we'll be hooking up with them. So thanks to Bandit Brewing and Tony over there. Nice job hooking us up. We appreciate you. So yeah, today is all about, and by the way, the topic of that show will be right on the cusp or the eve almost of free agency blasting open for 2020. So we will be talking free agent predictions on where we think people are going to land. And then we'll have some fun comparing our favorite football players to some craft beers that they offer over there at Bandit Brewing. So it's going to be a really good time. Today we're going to talk about rookie wide receiver prospects for 2020. Guys that we think may or may not make a fantasy impact. Places they might fit well in. And basically the breakdown on their projections and basically their draft status and all their measurables and all that fun stuff. Sound good to you, Johnny boy?
Sounds great.
Start spreading the news.
Okay, this in news, and I'm going to release a little statement with the news. I want to say,
Look how big
guys,
this Red Bull is. Sugar-free, though.
not a sponsor.
Hashtag not a sponsor, yeah.
One thing I want to say about news, guys, please make sure you guys confirm your sources, especially this time of the year. Lots of rumors and speculation, so do your homework before you make a stupid trade that could hurt your team.
Step your game up.
So make sure you confirm your sources, have your sources. A lot of beat writers out there that you can get your sources confirmed from.
Where is this going, John?
I'm just saying. So perfect example. First thing on news. Matt Stafford trade rumors are false, says GM Bob Quinn. There was speculation of him possibly getting traded to possibly the Chargers. I mean, multiple teams named. It is not true because if he was traded, it would cost the Lions $32 million against their cap.
That's all I can say about that. But hey, think about it. Could it be that they are trying to trade him and he doesn't know? So, it comes out and they're like, oh, no, that's not happening. That didn't come
I could see
from us.
I could see a $5 million cap space hit, but a $32 million, they wouldn't do it. Not for $32 million. Maybe next year or the year after, but not $32 million. That's a huge chunk of money to inherit for a cap space hit. So, next bit of news. Jameis Winston underwent LASIK surgery to repair his vision. Maybe this will help him. Maybe it will hurt him. Can't get any worse.
That's all I got for that one, too.
Okay, rumors are reporting that the Falcons may release Devontae Freeman. Devontae Freeman is 28 years old. He had 184 carries for 656 yards and 2 TDs. and had a measly 3.57 yards per carry. If they release him, they can save $3.5 million again in cap space for the upcoming season.
I could use that drop again. I really like that drop. That's a shame drop. But I don't want to burn out.
You have to have an in-betweener.
I don't want to burn out the rubber on it.
You could have an in-betweener there.
Yeah. But Freeman, so they're looking to trade him is what you're saying.
Yes.
Or cut him, potentially.
More cut than a trade.
Okay. I mean, do you blame them? He's making pretty good money. He's not ever typically very healthy. I think it's the right move. He's on the wrong side of, his 20s.
The other part to go
28, I think.
Yeah, but this is a good rookie running back draft class.
It's a good draft class.
Altogether,
We're going to talk about receivers today, John. I have heard analysts say that this is a historic draft class that we're talking about here today.
Very deep.
Yeah, and the running backs are pretty darn good too. So yeah, I don't blame them. I think the new trend now is rookie running backs are the trend. Teams are drafting running backs rather than spending money in free agency, and why not? These guys come in and they produce right away. And in the worst case scenario, you have a guy like David Montgomery that produces right away, but not as well as you expected him, and he needs a little more time to grow. But most of them just produce right away if they get the opportunity, and it doesn't have to be the Barkleys or the Elliots of the world. So, if I was running a franchise, John, that's how I'd do it. I wouldn't go after one in free agency, And these guys, it's truly the elite guys, even like Melvin Gordon, who I would consider an elite running back. He's not going to get paid a ton of money. He's just not, because the teams would say, well, I can give you $10 million a year, or I can go get a rookie and he might perform better than you. And, so there's a level of the unknown, with rookies, but I think this would be the right move for Atlanta for sure. And what has Devonta Freeman ever won them? They get to the Super Bowl, but you know what I mean? Like, he's not putting them over the top. That's for sure. If anything,
but
he's bringing them
there's
backwards.
a lot of free agents or soon to be free agents or people being released, like a David Johnson. You have Melvin Gordon, Todd Gurley trade talks.
You know who doesn't want David Johnson to get released and Devonta Freeman to get released? The running backs on the free agent market, because then that makes it even less likely for them to get a big payday, because there's going to be
I don't think
more saturated.
I don't think Atlanta's going to draft. I think they're going to go.
Well, they can't go with Brian Hill. You watched that guy last year.
No, Brian
right?
Hill's awful. I think they're going to go after somebody in free agency. I think they're going to use their pick for an offensive lineman.
So you think they're going to cut Freeman to go after somebody else in free agency? That's an interesting take. It's not impossible by any means. We'll see though.
They're not sticking with Brian Hill. We know that much.
No, that guy's the worst running back I've ever seen in my life.
And he's still on the NFL roster.
What else we got?
Last bit of news. Aaron Rappaport reports the Bengals are willing to facilitate a trade with Andy Dalton.
I really want to use that drop, but what if he went to the Patriots and that he was like their fill-in for a couple of years?
The Red Rifle.
That could happen.
It could.
That could happen. But he's about as irrelevant in fantasy as it gets. I mean, if he landed, or he could have a Ryan Tannehill type of year where all of a sudden he's halfway decent, but it's not going to be sustainable. So see ya, Andy Dalton. Time to move on. There's a new toy in town, and his name is Joe Burrow. We talked about him on the last show, John, when we talked about rookie quarterbacks and rookie tight ends. And today, we're moving the spotlight over to wide receivers. So who's your favorite? Before we get through here, who's your favorite wide receiver in this draft class? And you can't say CeeDee Lamb or Jerry Jeudy. Like as you were compiling stats and looking at some of the evaluations, who really jumped off the page at you as somebody interesting?
Well,
you mentioned
Lamb.
but you mentioned somebody earlier that kind of intrigued you, didn't you?
Rieger there. I'm trying to think of his first name there right now. Justin Jefferson.
It's Jalen Rieger.
Jalen Rieger.
And we might get the pronunciation of some of the lower down the list guys wrong. Bear with us John, that's kind of baked in, but I might get the pronunciation wrong as well. So bear with us if that occurs. But Rieger jumped off the page a little bit at you.
Who really jumped off the page was, if I'm saying this right, Laviska Shenault.
Yeah, he's
Junior.
We'll get to him. We're getting excited because we're really starting to get into the really exciting positions. the rookies that are coming out. And again, guys, we are looking at a class that a lot of analysts are saying this is a historic draft class for wide receivers, akin to, the Julio Jones year or the Odell year. There's high expectations for this group. So we'll see if they can live up to those expectations. But we're going to start with, out of Minnesota, John, Tyler Johnson. I found it interesting that the comp that was drawn for him was Davante Adams, which I'm like, man, that's kind of high praise. But Davante Adams wasn't a sure thing coming out. He had a lot of skills, but he had some opportunities as well. And he's just developed into a really good receiver. We got to remember, though, Davante, the first couple of years, we thought might have been a bust. He was on the road to Bustville, USA. And then he hitched a ride with Aaron Rodgers, and it's been beautiful, magical stuff since then. As far as Tyler Johnson, though, you're looking at this guy. What I like about him, John, is he understands defenses, and he knows his way around the field. He does a good job attacking the ball in the air as well. He can be a red zone threat. The problem is, he dropped a lot of passes, it looked like, and he doesn't have that top-end speed, and he's not an elite athlete. So that kind of concerns me with Tyler Johnson. In the NFL, everything is just on fast forward. You know what I mean? And when he was in college, he kind of dominated against smaller defensive backs, and he did it out of the slot, which doesn't mean that he couldn't do that in the NFL as well. He's got good footwork, which would help him a lot. But I'm concerned because he's just not that high. I don't think high-level athlete. And where he doesn't have that top-end speed, I feel like, he might be in over his head in the NFL. But he can play outside in the slot, so he's got some versatility there. And he really could surprise me. But especially playing in Minnesota, not the toughest competition. Not the worst either, but a little bit of concern with Tyler Johnson, John.
The biggest things I look at are, for a prospect, I don't like the one-year wonders, I guess is the way to call them.
Yeah, that's a good
Tyler
point.
Johnson to me, statistically, is not a one-year wonder like some of these draft prospects coming out. So Tyler Johnson, as a junior, had 78 receptions for 1,169 yards, a 15-yard average, 12 TDs as a junior, like I said. His senior year, 86 receptions, 1,318 yards, 15.3 average, and 13 TDs as a senior.
Yeah.
The one thing I do like about him is that I've read about, is a good football IQ. He creates his own space. In the NFL, that's something. So he doesn't have that blazing speed, but it's not always.
But he knows his way around the field.
Exactly. Yeah. So if he can take that step and that cut to create space, that could be the move that puts him over the top in the NFL as well.
And I don't want to sound too critical about Johnson. Let me specify, I guess, my take on him. I don't think he's not going to succeed in the NFL. I think he'll succeed on the right team in the right situation. If he goes and you team him up with Michael Thomas, John, in New Orleans, I think he's going to have a lot of success.
Yes. So reading about him more, he's not your X receiver. He's not going to go and catch that 60-yard bomb. He's the type to more beat you in slot coverage.
He can do both.
He's kind of like
like a Cortland Sutton that can do both. Christian Kirk's a great example of a guy that can do both. So he does have versatility. So like I said, I think on the right team, the Saints just keep standing out to me. They already have Michael Thomas. He would be a good addition to pair with Thomas. But I don't think you can put him on
as a number one.
Definitely not a number one. And I don't think, he could go to a team like Chicago and succeed. You know what I mean? I think it has to be the right situation.
Okay, so next prospect up is
Bryan Edwards out of South Carolina. John and I were just talking about how his comp is David Terrell, who was a gigantic bust in 2001, drafted by the Chicago Bears, ended up on the Patriots, ended up on Denver. So I thought it interesting that was his comp. But with that being said, you look at Bryan Edwards, he's got very good size. He plays strong. He had good production against the SEC competition, John, which some would argue is the toughest competition in college football. He's used on all 3 levels by South Carolina. He's shifty. He's physical. He's got really good ball tracking downfield. Those are pretty much the strengths I had for him.
His worst trait I saw was agility.
Yeah,
That's concerning.
And his route running does need to be tweaked a little bit. It's not the best. That's not his best. I guess what's the word I'm looking? I'm drawing a blank
best
here.
Trait?
I'm dying over here. Yeah, his best trait. Thank you. Sorry. But yeah, no. I mean, and the one thing too, and I'm sorry, I'm getting all messed up on David. I'm
David Terrell.
David Terrell, Brian Edwards here. He isn't so. When I look for a receiver in fantasy football, we're going to be very specific to fantasy football. I want a guy that runs really good routes. I want a guy that has good hands, and I want a guy that is good with 50-50 balls. And he needs some improvement there as well, along with his route running. And he kind of had some situations where kind of lack of effort hurt him a little bit. So again, we're talking about the 9th guy on the list here, but Brian Edwards is not a guy I'm expecting to have an impact right away. Maybe in Dynasty you pick him up and stash him. But regardless of the situation, I think Brian Edwards needs to develop a little bit before if he even does, pop.
I mean, his stat line, he started since his freshman year, but none of the seasons pop out to me. I know senior year, he did tear his meniscus and missed a few games. He only played 10 games in 2019, his senior year. He had 71 catches for 816 yards and 6 TDs. That was his second best year, believe it or not. His first best year was his junior year, 55 receptions for 846 yards and 7 TDs. I get he's in the SEC. It's a hard division. But at the same time, you got to pop in the college to make a big difference in the pros. And not always. There's always those, Jerry Rice's from Mississippi State that didn't dominate in college, but it came out to be one of the best wide receivers ever. But I'm not sold on this guy. He's like a third or fourth wide receiver for me, and possibly not even this year. I think he's gonna not go too high in the draft. As you know what I'm saying? Not one of the ones we have targeted. I'd say 3rd or 4th round.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Let's move on to the next one, John, out of Arizona State. I think I'm saying this correctly. Brandon Ayuk out of Arizona State. What do you got on him, John?
So Ayuk is, whether it's creating the catch or stretching the defense vertically in a game, he's a big play threat.
I like this guy.
Yeah, he's twitchy and dynamic with the ball. Who does that remind you of?
Oh, God.
Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Slippery for tacklers. He's, he's just moves with his hips. But here's a guy 6'2", 201. He had 65 receptions for 1,192 yards, an 18.3 average in 8 TDs. That's pretty solid. He get the frame, yeah.
Yeah.
He's good all around, competitive. Shows competitive toughness. Also, he's pretty decent at blocking. One of his cons is he struggles in press coverage. He can get stuck on the routes and sometimes gets challenged. So, thing is, if he meets a solid corner, can he beat that coverage? But this is stuff that can be taught too, though. And then he has to develop more hand technique at the line of scrimmage. And what that means is you have to use your hands more at the line of scrimmage. What means is beating the defender, or basically you're trying to beat that defender by how you use your hands. So if you're coming off, pushing off, or what I'm saying, he doesn't have all of it. But he is great for yards after the catch.
Yeah, man. That's the other thing I fall in love with.
His worst trait is contested catches, and then, like I said, clearing press coverage.
He needs some work as a route runner as well. He's not at 6'1". That's not an incredibly tall receiver.
No.
But I think he's got a lot of good skills. He doesn't have the top end speed that a Tyreek Hill has. So it's not quite a complete comp there. But he's a big play threat. He's got athletic ability. He's tough. He's got a good build. He's got burst. And his run after the catch skills can be lethal, John. And that's what I like about Ayuk.
Did you see who his comp was?
I did not.
It is Cordell Patterson.
So I could see that. That makes a lot of sense.
Because this guy can return balls too. I don't know if you guys know that either. So
he can, yeah. And Patterson carved out a pretty good career for himself, not necessarily from a fantasy standpoint. And I think Ayuk could really eclipse what Patterson did. I think it's a decent comp in terms of skills, but I think Ayuk might have a better NFL career. Again, a lot of this hinges on where they land. He's not a number one stud wide receiver, but he's a good complementary piece. Kind of like when Kansas City got McCole Hardman last year. I look at it something like that along those lines. All right, John, Justin Jefferson out of LSU. What do you got on him?
So Justin Jefferson, we'll go over his stat line. So his senior year, and this is amazing, guys. 111 receptions, 1,540 receiving yards, and 18 TDs with a 13.9 average. That was his junior year. I apologize. Sophomore year, 13 games, 54 receptions, 875 yards, 16.2 average with 6 TDs, and overall 901 scrimmage yards. He had also 26 yards rushing that year. So he's a
we talk about how Alabama is a wide receiver factory. LSU's right up there, man.
Yeah.
As of late, they've been churning him out there. I mean, this guy has a lot of skills that you look for in the NFL, but he's got some stuff that might hinder him a little bit. He definitely it causes a mismatch in terms of height and length. He knows how to he tracks the ball well. He's a good route runner. He's got good hands. He's got good leaping ability. He's got good body control. He's a really good talent with a lot of athleticism. My concern with him is that, again, the speed in the NFL has to be faster. But by and large, I like him a lot. He's not a burner type of receiver, but I think he could be a really solid number 2 in the NFL.
His NFL comp is Tyler Boyd.
Yeah, you know what? And that's perfect because that's exactly what I would expect out of Justin Jefferson in the league. And I think he's going to provide that. I really do. He's got a lot of good qualities.
Oh, we're getting to the big boys.
I know, yeah. All right, next on the list, John. I know you're going to like this one because his name kind of sounds like a fine wine, and you like to compare players to finely aged wines. And this is Laviska Shenault.
Junior.
Ugh.
He is 6'2", 220 pounds from Colorado. He's a junior. So I'll go into his stats real quick so that we guys have an idea.
Laviska Shenault,
Junior. So sophomore year, 86 receptions for 1,011 yards, 11.8 average, 6 TDs, and he also ran the ball for 17 carries for 115 yards.
And you know who his comp is? Sammy Watkins. Which people hear that name,
they think
they cringe, but Sammy Watkins is an excellent player. He's just hurt all the time, and had he had a more reliable career, then he would have been a much better commodity in a fantasy regard or respect. So when you hear Sammy Watkins as a comp, that's a really good compliment and comparison, as it were.
He also had, when I was going into his rushing yards, he had
He's tougher than Sammy Watkins.
Well, by running the ball, I can see it. 17 carries for 115 yards, 6.8 yard average, and 5 TDs rushing. So he had 11.
That's a Deebo Samuel thing, too. And I really think, John, because what do we like to do? We like to stay way ahead of the curve. All these other dummies are watching us win championships. These guys, these hybrid wide receiver running backs.
Different level.
And they are going to be the future, I think. Much like the hybrid running back, like the Christian McCaffreys.
Or the Taysom Hills.
The Deebo Samuels are going to be just as valuable, I think.
So he had 11 TDs.
And Shenault falls into that category.
Yes, Shenault had 11 TDs as a sophomore. That's a sophomore. Junior year, he took a little step back. And remember, sometimes it's not always him. It's the quarterback change and coaching change. 56 receptions, 764 yards, 13.6 yard average, 4 TDs. But he also had 23 carries for 161 yards, a higher average, 7-yard average, and 2 TDs. So he had less touchdowns, but he's dynamic.
I'll tell you what I like about this guy. First of all, there's one word that sticks to my mind whenever everywhere I looked when I was kind of looking for information on him is run. That word just kept popping up. He's a good route runner. He's a great open field runner. and he's got that second gear. This dude can move. He can boogie. And you add that to the fact that he's got a strong build. He's physical. He fights. He's dangerous in terms of run after the catch. This guy has what I like to see in an NFL wide receiver. He's good at getting separation, John. He's got good hands. He's got good height. He's got good technique. He can find soft spots in the zone. Unlike Sammy Watkins, this guy plays hurt. He makes big plays when they matter the most. He's a great clutch player. He's about as versatile, John, as you're going to find. And I love this kid. One of his weaknesses is, much like Sammy Watkins, although he plays hurt, unlike Sammy Watkins, he does get banged up. Not to the degree that Watkins does, but that's my big concern for him. But everything else I look at, John, I like a lot. And when we talk about who jumped off the page at you when you did research, this guy jumped off the page at me. This guy is somebody that I could see, being a number one wide receiver in the league. Maybe not right away.
2 years, third year.
Yep,
the third year breakout.
But this is a guy like, how unreliable is Will Fuller at this point? You put this dude in Houston with DeAndre Hopkins, and we're talking electric, my man.
Yeah, but you get this guy plays like you said, like Deebo Samuel, Tyreek Hill. He's a 3-level weapon, not only catching, but he can also do the jet sweeps. You know what I'm saying? The shuffle passes. He's just that dynamic because he's a blend of size, power, and burst.
Yeah, he's like you said, he's contributed as a short yardage running back. I love this kid. I'm really high on him. It'd be interesting to see where he goes. He goes to Houston, dude, or a team like that that's got or New Orleans. You know what I mean? Those type of teams that have an established number one. Or think about it. Let's say Dallas moves on from Amari Cooper. He goes to Dallas. Michael Gallup's the number one. To me, it could be 1 and 1A between those guys.
He can also return the ball, but he doesn't do well on so much punt returns as kickoff. But the other point of it is that he is very versatile because he can play X receiver as well as slot, so he can play both positions.
Flanker, split end, slot, whatever you need this kid to do, he can do. So he's versatile. He's got good hands. He's got yards after the catch ability. He gets physical. He goes after the ball. He picks up yards after contact, too, John. Like, he's got a lot of really good qualities. I am high on this kid. I'd love to see him in Dallas. But I think there's a lot of places he could go, John, and he can contribute right away.
Yeah, his red flags, just FYI, this is why his numbers were down in 2019. He did have his surgery to repair his torn labrum.
He's got some durability issues.
Yeah, and then the other was turf toe. Turf toe affects even the best receivers in the NFL, a.k.a. Davante Adams.
Davante Adams, he'll tell you.
So that happened this year. So, I mean, I wouldn't let it, put a dark cloud over him altogether. No. But I love what I read about this kid.
He could go to Las Vegas and contribute, right? What team do you think, other than where Trash Bisky is, that he wouldn't be able to contribute right away? Honestly, or a flooded receiving core. So he's going to have to go to a place where there's some meat on the bone in terms of volume, and he's going to probably have to go to a place where the quarterback isn't complete trash. But I think he's going to contribute year one, possibly to the degree that Deebo did. Not all year long, but I don't think you're going to see a Paris Campbell year out of him. I think you're going to see more of a Deebo Samuel year out of him. Unrelated note, do not give up on Paris Campbell, though. Jalen Reagor out of TCU, John. Talk to me.
5'11", 195 pounds. Okay, sophomore year, 72 receptions for 1,161 yards, 14.7 yard average, 9 TDs, and also carried the ball 13 times for 170 yards and 2 TDs, 11 touchdowns total as a sophomore year. His junior year, 43 receptions, 611 yards, 14.2 yard average, and 5 TDs. Reagor is very craft and twitchy, and he can create space for himself. But the problem is that he has a very, what's the word I want to use? Simplified route tree. So he's not
limited.
He's very limited on his route tree, which scares me because when you get to the NFL, it doesn't matter. Even the worst team has a big route tree. It's going to be a learning curve, I think, as it relates for him in routes. I think that's where he will struggle, but he has great speed. is also the other part of it is
he gets there fast too. He gets to that top speed really quickly.
But the problem is, can he catch the football? Because that's the other worst trait of him is his hands. He's not known for his hands. So kind of sounds, that's why his comp comparison is Nelson Aguilar.
If his ball skills could match his athletic ability, maybe you'd be talking maybe a top 3 guy in this class right now. But he does have some versatility, John. He's got the ability to create chunk plays, which you want in fantasy football. He's got good hips. He snaps off breaks well. He can lose coverage, especially at the top of the route. He gets, like I said, he gets to that top speed really fast. I look at him, he's fluid, and he's kind of soft and silky and smooth with it, the way he moves, but he's explosive too. He combines those two things together. One of the things I noted too, as far as a weakness for him or an opportunity for him, he had some frustration with the quarterback, and that kind of looked like it affected his play at times. So he might have an issue in terms of, an attitude a little bit.
A diva?
Yeah, but add that to the stuff that you had mentioned, John. He's definitely not a perfect prospect, but he's got some skills. He's ranked ahead of the fine wine, but I wouldn't put him necessarily ahead. I mean, these are not our rankings necessarily. So to me, Chenault is a better prospect, but Rieger's definitely got some skills too. And I've seen him in mocks going in the first round, John.
Who, Rieger?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he's got, because it's what he can possibly bring, but
I've seen him go into Green Bay in the first round. Oh boy, Chenault in Green Bay.
Oh, LaVisca Chenault.
Okay.
But you know who's going to be coaching him?
Who?
Lafleur.
Lafleur and Chenault.
LaVisca Chenault and Lafleur. Aaron Jones and Rodgers.
And cheese. There's cheese there too. What a perfect combination.
Cheese and wine.
Cheese and wine. That'll be the new nickname. All right, Henry Ruggs the third, John, out of the factory of Alabama, the wide receiver factory. Not the best wide receiver in Alabama this year, but pretty darn good.
But you start going over his numbers. He's a junior at Alabama, 6'1", 190, 40 receptions, 746 yards, 18.7 yard average. That's unbelievable.
His comp was Ted Ginn Jr., which didn't excite me all that much, but I mean, Ginn has
I don't have
talent.
that for a comp.
Really? Who do you have?
Tyreek Hill.
So that's a much better version of Ted Ginn Jr., so that's interesting.
He had 8 TDs total, 7 receiving, 1 rushing. His pros.
Although Ted Ginn still in the league, so I mean the guy's had a decent
in
career.
his prime he could stretch the field.
Right, definitely.
So I can see that Tyreek comparison in Ted Ginn. The pros for Ruggs is that he has like top notch speed. There's not many players that can keep pace with him. He absolutely destroys coverage, pursuit angles. He has a rare ability to accelerate and achieve unprecedented speed.
Yeah, what I like about Ruggs is he actually played all 3 receiver spots. I mean, he was X, Y, Z, LMNOP. The guy could do anything out there in terms of where he was lined up on the field. He scored a touchdown, John, on 20% of his catches at Clemson. So he's got a nose for the end zone, which is obviously those touchdowns put you over the top in fantasy football. He's got the ability to create mismatches against size deficient cornerbacks. He's got long strides. He's got really good instinct. Once the ball goes up in the air, he kind of always knows where it's going to land. You know what I mean? So these are really good qualities. He's got soft hands. He's just a reliable target, especially in space. Like you said, he's got some opportunities. He beat up on a lot of cornerbacks that weren't really top competition. So it was one of those deals where not quite tomato cans out there, but not exactly the top dogs that he went against either. But I mean, like you said, route tree was pretty limited, and his ball adjustments on the move were a little disjointed. Needs a little bit more upper body strength as well.
And catch radius.
Yeah, his catch radius was a bit of an opportunity as well. So, not a perfect prospect. There's probably only 2 of those. In my opinion, 1 of those. I think you feel like there's 2 of those in this draft. But he's going to be somewhere between Ted Ginn Jr. and Tyreek Hill. You hope that it's on the Tyreek Hill side, but it remains to be seen.
I think there's 1A and 1B here. 1A is elite. 1B is very good. That's what we'll go over in the next when we're getting there.
You know, and in what John's talking about is Jerry Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb. I see Jeudy ranked ahead of Lamb by some people. Yeah,
are they crazy? It's Lamb all the way for me.
Yeah, and
I like Jeudy, but Lamb is
and it's going in that direction more and more. But especially early, mid-season in college, there were some people that thought Jeudy was a better prospect than Lamb.
I mean, I can see in some sense why they're gonna say Jeudy, because Ruggs plays in Alabama too, so he kind of takes that ball away where CeeDee Lamb doesn't really have that number 2 there.
Right.
But if you take away HR3 away from Jeudy, what would Jeudy have done? It's possible. So, I mean, that's why I say 1A, 1B. But, so next prospect up.
T. Higgins out of Clemson, Clemson Tiger. His comp is actually a Bengal Tiger by the name of A.J. Green.
Really?
That's the comp that I saw.
My comp was Tyrell Williams.
Okay, well, that's interesting.
But Tyrell Williams was good.
He good.
He good.
Yeah, he's not bad. When I look at my boy T. Higgins here, he's a guy that can create mismatches. The elusive T. Higgins. I seem to keep screwing up when I'm going over Mr. Higgins. Remember Higgins from Annie, Little Orphan Annie back in the day? You don't remember that?
No, I remember that. I remember that movie.
So Higgins, looking at him, he's got really good instinct, especially when the ball's in the air. He's got a good feel for the defender. Makes good adjustments to the ball pretty much every time. John, he's very good at adjusting to the ball. He's got long strides. Good turns, and he draws a lot of pass interference penalties, which is pretty interesting stat. And that's actually a growing stat too that people are looking at a lot more. What do you got on him?
So this is what I have for T. Higgins. First, I'll go into his thing. He's 6'4", 215. He is the prototype for a receiver.
Yeah, he's a big boy.
He's a big boy. He's a junior out of Clemson. So sophomore year, 59 receptions, 936 yards, receiving 15.9 yard average. 12 TDs as a sophomore. Junior, 59 receptions, same amount, but for 1,167 yards in the 19.8 yard average. That's what Trevor Lawrence throwing to him.
Yeah.
So big difference.
Yeah.
13 TDs, 1 rushing also. So 14 TDs as a junior. The big thing about Higgins is he is overall just a big guy, long torso, arms. So his catch radius is huge. It's very impressive, actually. His highlight reels because of how big he is, but I can see why he gets those pass interference calls so much. Having that long of a torso, they just touch you in the wrong way, and you're gonna get that pass interference call.
So is he DK Metcalf? Is that what you're thinking?
No, I wouldn't say DK Metcalf. I'm trying to think. To me, the thing is, he's got a very small route tree.
Yeah.
That is
true. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not a fine, polished route runner, which means he seemed to me to be more of a red zone.
That was
threat.
kind of the knock on Metcalf too, though. Like that he didn't have a very.
It's possible.
Yeah.
Or does Trevor Lawrence make him that look that much better? But
Maybe.
his ball skills are really good, and that's hard to find. But at his size, he could be an immediate red zone threat immediately. But like I said, his comparison is Tyrell Williams. But with Trevor Lawrence, so when those two played together, so T. Higgins and Trevor Lawrence for 2 years, he produced 118 receptions, 2,103 yards, and 25 TDs.
I can't wait till Trevor Lawrence comes out next
year. That shows you, if he has a good quarterback throwing to him, that he could be an elite receiver.
So what are some landing spots for him, John, that you think would be a good placement in terms of being able to produce right away?
New Orleans,
yeah, that's always or Green Bay. Those
Green Bay would be another one, red zone threat.
We'll talk about who I think's going there with our next guy. But yeah, those are definitely good landing spots. I look at Indianapolis as a wide open receiving group, dude. You got T.Y. Hilton, and we're not sure where he's at in terms of where he's at his career right now. I think he's 30, isn't he?
But truly, is he the number one there anymore? I think he
is, but I think Paris Campbell is excellent. He's another one that I go Brokeback Mountain on him. I just won't quit on him.
I'm not gonna leave that alone.
Him and Andy Isabella, like I just can't quit on them. And but I do think that's a wide open receiving core that a guy like Higgins could slide in there and produce right away as well. I think that's an opportunity there as well. There's a few other teams, but in Green Bay we always think of because we're just so yearning for the wide receiver too in Green Bay as well as New Orleans.
And it could turn out to be nothing. LaFleur could have probably changed his team. LaFleur.
But we already determined that was the
LaVisca Chanel Jr.
The wine and cheese.
So I don't want to go into the.
Sacre
If we go by our list, we're going Lamb next and then Judy. Let's do Judy
I'm
first.
going Jerry Judy next. Lamb is the
I'm
top.
fine with that.
He's the top of the heap. He's the cream of the crop. But Jerry Judy, he good too. His comp I have for him is another Alabama receiver by the name of Amari Cooper. Who do you have for a comp?
Hold on one second. I just lost my spot. I believe, and I think.
So, Jerry
We'll go
Judy.
with Amari Cooper.
Amari Cooper, okay. If you find it, let me know. But this guy's an excellent route runner. He's sudden out of his breaks. He's explosive out of his cuts. The guy can score on literally any time he gets his hands on the ball. That's how explosive he is. I mean, he's got yards after the catch ability. He's got big play speed. He messes with the game plan for the other team. You know what I mean? He's that type of a difference maker. He stretches the defense. He's got great body control, quick feet, great leaping ability. He's a good blocker. What can this guy not do? He's durable too. He's a great all-around receiver, and I think Amari Cooper really is a perfect comp for him. This is the first guy on our list, John, in terms of a player that we look at that can truly be an elite number one receiver in the league. He's only got a few drawbacks. He doesn't have great height. He's got kind of a thin frame, but in terms of the way he plays the game, he doesn't have really much that you can point at that you can be critical of. This is the guy that I have this really strange feeling we're going to see in New Orleans or Green Bay. And I think those teams are going to trade up to get him, John. I think they would have to.
Yeah, Judy's only downfall is just like Amari Cooper's. It's the hands. Remember all the drops Amari Cooper had his, second year, I believe? 7 or 8 drops?
I didn't really have that on him, but, I mean...
No, it's not awful for him, but if they had to pick one bad trait about him, it's his hands.
So where's your dream spot for Judy?
Judy, it all depends. I mean, you could, if for some reason Miami took Tua, let's say with the number 5 pick and then number 18, let's say they got a running back through free agency, they could take Judy with number 18. Pair him up.
That'd be cool.
That's what I'm saying. It could happen.
I'd love to see him in Green Bay, and I think it would only help Devontae Adams. And I think that's where he's going to end up. I think Green Bay is going to trade up to get him because I think they realize running the ball with Aaron Jones over and over and over again ain't going to win you a championship.
But there's also talks of, I just read today on Twitter, the Giants are thinking about going receiver with their first-round pick, which makes no sense.
It really doesn't because Slayton, I think, has got a lot of talent. Obviously, Sterling Shepard's solid, Golden Tate. But maybe they kind of, and one of the things, John, that teams do want is they had Odell Beckham, so they had that guy that can get you a touchdown just out of nowhere. And they really, they kind of have it with Slayton, but he's not a talent on the level of Odell. So there's teams that, from a comfortability standpoint, if that's a word, comfortability, I think that is. They want that guy that can just stretch the defense and get you a touchdown out of nowhere. So that might be why they're looking at a guy like Judy, but I don't see that happening. It could, though. Some of these guys, you never know with some teams, man. It'll come out of nowhere, and teams will just... Bill Belichick's a perfect example. They'll just pick guys that you just don't expect. So that definitely could happen. I don't think it would be great for Judy, though, necessarily.
So I'm going to go into a couple stats for Judy before we go into CeeDee Lamb. So Judy, as a sophomore, had 68 receptions, 1,315 yards, 19.3 yard average, 14 DDs as a sophomore. Junior year, 77 receptions, 1,163 yards, and a 15.1 yard average and 10 TDs, and that's with Ruggs there as well.
Yes, that's true.
Yes. So that's why I mean his ceiling could have been higher, which could also limit his status a little bit. You know what I'm saying? That's why I'm not saying I'm not. That to me, he's the 1B. That's why we're going to talk about 1A.
We're going to CD Lamb. I love this guy. His comp, actually, I looked up all over the place, kind of get comps for him, and it's anywhere from DeAndre Hopkins to Chad Johnson, and neither of those are insulting as far as I'm concerned. The guy is just a big play talent, and he's a big play talent no matter where he is on the field. Anytime this guy gets the ball in the hands, he's like a horror movie for the opposing defense, dude. It's just ugly. It's scary. The guy averaged 21.4 yards per catch in 2019.
Oh, you stole my stat.
21.4 yards per catch. That's unbelievable.
And you thought 18 was high, and this guy has 21, and that's 62 receptions.
Yep. He can go up and get the ball. He's got good arm extension. He's got good hands, so he's going to get that 50-50 ball. He gets right up there for jump balls, man, and that's a huge stat for me. He's actually a good punt returner too, which is interesting. So you could get a few extra points from him in that regard. But yeah, no, the guy, he can really not only get after the 50-50 ball, John, but he can go after the hard, difficult, deep catches.
Yes.
Like he'll go out and get the ball. It's like he's got a nose for that football, and he's going to get it no matter what.
Well, the thing is, in terms of his hands and ball skills, it's his tracking of the football.
Yeah.
Kind of like DJ is trying to say. So where the ball's like 4 yards away, deep in the air, he's going 4 yards to that. He makes your quarterback look better. He made Jalen Hurts that much better at passing because he's the one who got under the ball.
Yeah, he's just got great vision.
Yes.
It's like a quarterback has great vision. This dude has great vision. And it's that football IQ too, John. And I think that's why I like him so much, is because he's not just a big talented guy. We've seen millions of big talented guys, and a lot of them don't pan out. This guy has that football IQ, and he just it's almost like the Kavorka a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and he's not even his best traits are ball skills, body control. His worst trait is straight line speed. But it's almost like a kid when he takes a test. Maybe in that class he got an A, but when he took the test he got a C. That's what kind of CD Lamb reminds me of. Is he's the guy on paper. Yeah, he's not going to blow you and get you he hasn't even run his 40 yet, but if we had to guess, let's say a 4.5 40, he might only run a 4.6 40, but when he's on that field, he's running like a 4.3 40. Yeah. He just, that's why I say, when people say straight line speed, it's not always about straight line speed. It's how you run on the field and how you play as a player. And everything I read about CD Lamb is just that eliteness of like everything. He knows where the ball is going, his football IQ. The guy is going to be, honestly, a franchise wide receiver for a team.
I think he's can't miss. And, I mean, I think we're looking at a guy, I think him, Deebo Samuel, guys like that, in 5 years, John, they're going to be the Julio Jones of the world and the DeAndre Hopkins of the world. They're going to be in that elite core.
Only thing I think he needs to do is he
needs to beef up a little.
Yeah, 189 scares me. I don't know what you got him for weight. I got him for 189.
I had him right around, I thought it was right around 200, but he's slender. And that's the thing with him, and that could be an issue in terms of durability. The major thing that I saw with him as a only really drawback, I guess I would call it, is he wasn't really challenged by opposing cornerbacks. It was just
you read the same thing too.
Yeah,
he never went up against big, great. I should say big corners, but challenging corners.
Right, and it was almost like they didn't want to challenge him, and he just owned the space that he was in. But you kind of have to attribute that to him as well. I'm telling you guys, unless I see something that really scares me off, CD Lamb, and we talk about our keeper league all the time. We're in a keeper league. I would consider drafting him in the first round. And that's after 4 keepers, if he went to Oakland. And I'm reading, John, every mock draft I look at, I think there was one that he didn't go to the Raiders. And I looked at like 10 mock drafts, and every single one of them
everybody's got him going to the Raiders.
Did I say Oakland? I meant Las Vegas if I said Oakland.
They haven't moved yet.
Yeah, creature of habit here. No, they haven't, yeah. But anyway, if he goes to Las Vegas, he's the number 1 there de facto. Like, it's not Tyrell Williams, who I think might be a free agent anyway. Hunter Renfrow,
slot receiver,
I think actually helps him if he goes there. So if CeeDee Lamb goes to Oakland, sorry, Ernie, I'm probably going to take him in the first round, and I'm not even going to think twice about it.
Oh, and if he goes there too, you know who's a bust?
Who's a bust?
Waller.
I definitely don't think it's going to help Waller. I don't look at Waller as a bust, but he will not. I don't think he'll repeat this season.
No.
Especially if CeeDee Lamb is in Las Vegas. Man, I bet Tom Brady would love to have a wide receiver like CeeDee Lamb, but I also thought he would love to have a wide receiver like N'Keal Harry. So I guess what do I know?
I don't know. This draft, the more information gets released, I don't know how these guys do it, but I see this draft turning upside down for a couple of reasons. I don't believe that the Chargers are going to stick with Tyrod as their starting quarterback, or even Easton Stick.
No,
that's their second QB.
Easton Stunk is more like it. I think they're going after Tua. I think he ends up in LA.
Like I said remember I told you last show, I said they're gonna trade up.
I think that, but there was something I read too in next Thursday's episode, guys, is going to be. By the way, we apologize. It came out a little late on Thursday this week, but next Thursday's episode is going to be what we learned from last season. And one of the things I learned a lot about Terry McLaurin, a lot, and I did a ton of research. I banged the books on him before I offered you a trade. And everybody's looking at me like I'm crazy because I sent Julio to you for McLaurin and a third-round pick. And everybody thought I was crazy when I sent Kelsey for Kittle and a third-round pick, and that worked out pretty well for me.
No, I think
McLaurin, one of the things I read, my point that I'm getting to, is that Washington might finally be starting to realize that Haskins isn't very good, and they might also be falling in love with one Tua Tagovailoa. And if that happens, I might have me a gold mine on my... I think I already do have a gold mine on my hands with McLovin. I love this kid. I mean, we'll break that down next week because he's going to be one of the things I learned from this past season, that he is a stud receiver. A little spoiler alert there. But, yeah, I think Tua could end up at Washington now. That's a landing spot. They could Josh Rosen, Haskins out of town, and go after Tua. What do you think of that?
There's a lot of talk going on the Twitter world, if you're on Twitter.
The Twitterverse.
There's also talks of Redskins possibly resigning Adrian Peterson, but now there's talks of not even Geis being the starter.
How can you trust him at this point?
They're talking about Bryce Love possibly being the number one there.
Well, how can you trust him to stay healthy?
He was a Heisman candidate, though.
But he was never healthy either. So,
well, wait and see. I'm telling you.
I'm a Cowboys fan, dude. That team can stink as long as they want. But if they get Tua, I don't think that's going to happen anymore. But we'll see about that. Until then, we'll prep you guys for running backs next week. As you can tell,
I'm drooling on this episode.
John is much more college football savvy than I am. I'm always kind of late to the game, and I cram in January on all these rookies. John follows these guys throughout their college career.
Yes, that's the one thing I can say. I watch college football probably more than you do. Not every weekend like I should be, but I do follow these guys quite a bit. But no, next show, I've been actually doing a lot of show prep for this.
You did a great job.
Next week, cannot wait to get into running backs because there's going to be some obvious ones you're going to say, and then I've got some not so obvious ones that I like.
Who do you like better, DeAndre? Is it DeAndre Swift or is it Jonathan Taylor?
Overall, I'd rather have DeAndre Swift.
Cam Akers, my man.
I said Cam Akers to you last time.
I thought I said that to you.
No, I said to you outside.
That might have been a mutual thing, but Cam Akers is definitely somebody I got my eye on, too.
Dobbins to the right team as well.
Yeah, Cam Akers had an awful offensive line, dude. That offense in
general makes a difference.
It really certainly does. So, well, as you can see, we're already getting excited about it. Sorry we might have had a couple rough edits there. The video might be a little rugged this time around. But, it is what it is. We are the Working Class Podcast, and we get to say that we're the Working Class Podcast because it gives us a built-in excuse for when we screw up and make mistakes, right, John?
Especially when you've been up since 3 like I have.
Especially when you say especially instead of
especially. Remember,
I gave up
March 11th, 7 p.m., Bandit Brewing Company. Come one, come all. Come see the live podcast.
We'll try to get John buzzed and see how his pronunciation goes.
I'll say especially.
All right, well, we'll especially see you on Monday.
See you guys.
Excuse me, Tuesday. We'll see you next Tuesday, guys.
See you guys.
Thank you for listening to the Armchair Fantasy Football Podcast. Thanks for supporting the show. Until next time.